Hi everyone, welcome to video 4, I think it is. And so far you have gathered your materials, you've understood kind of the intro to this lab and why we're doing it, you've designed your experiment, you've decided how many mung beans, how many petri dishes, how long, your concentrations, and you've done the calculations for this. Now you're ready to finally set it up. So I'm going to be following the instructions that I put on here in the lab instructions under where it says setup instructions. So if you get lost, don't forget to relook on this page here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you all what it is that I'm doing on this like side camera view, and hopefully this will work out and be okay for you all. So while I get that set up, make sure you've gathered the materials and you have a good workspace that you are able to use. Okay, great. So we've got this ready to go. I've got my instructions in front of me here, and this is what we're going to follow. So first thing, want to make sure that all of our petri dishes are cleaned from our last one. Mine are already clean here. Second thing, using the blue tape that you got or any sort of masking tape, something that's easy to peel off of the petri dishes, I want you to label the salt concentration and the date on each of yours. So for example, I wrote 1.5 to 1.7, and this is my control. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lid of my petri dish, the top, and that's where I'm going to put it. I'm just going to put it just like that there. And I'm going to do that for every single one of my petri dishes. So for example, this one says 0.5 solution. And make sure you keep track of these. It's really easy to have them look the same. So this is why we label. Very nice to make sure we have these. Great. Another pro tip that I have is, because once you take the lid off, you like have no idea what's in the petri dish, right? What you could do is you could take a tiny bit of tape here, and what you can do is you can make a little hinge on your petri dish so that you can open the lid, but the lid will stay attached. That way you always know that this one, for example, is the 5% solution. Okay, so just a little pro tip in case you're like me and we'll move the lids and stuff around. Okay, great. So we've done step 2. Now moving on to step 3 over here. It says, fold your paper towel in half 3 times to create 8 squares. Draw a circle the size of your petri dish, cut it out. This should result in 8 circles the size. So you should have gotten a paper towel similar to this. You can fold it in half again, and then in half one more time. And we kind of want to get this square shape pattern here. Right, and the fold doesn't have to be perfect or anything. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your petri dishes, and honestly, if you just kept it like this, it'd probably be fine. But if you want to trim off these corner parts here, that would be really useful. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to trim the corners so that they don't stick out of the petri dishes. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cut all of these apart. So I'm just going to cut where all the folds are. And hopefully this works to break them all apart. If you have more paper towels at home, because I think I only gave you one paper towel, it is actually really great to have 10 of these little circles because we can cover then both the top and the bottom of each petri dish. So I would highly recommend, if you have any other paper towel at home, that would be really useful. The other way you could have done this is you could have just cut out the 8 pieces. So let's see if I did that right. Yeah, so you should end up with kind of little pieces like this, and they should be able to fit inside of the petri dish. Oh, I missed one. Cut. Cool. And again, like I said, if you have multiple paper towels. If you have more at home, feel free to make more of these. You'll want 10 total if you are doing 5 Petri dishes. Okay, great. So now that we've done that, you're going to put one paper towel in each circle of the Petri dish. So I'm actually going to take these out. So I've got my Petri dish, and I'm going to place one of these inside here and try to get it fitting inside of the Petri dish as much as you can. Great, and I'm going to do that for each of mine here. And sorry, you'll notice that I already counted out my mung beans so that you don't have to watch me count them out on the video. But again, we're just putting these all inside. Paper towels inside the Petri dish. Make sure there are no corners sticking out, because that will lead to evaporation and so on. Okay, cool. So once we've done that, we're going to put the mung beans on top of the paper towel. So actually, as I was doing that, I could just put the mung beans back on top here as such. And what you want to do is try to place them so that they aren't touching, that they're spread out evenly across the paper towel. And important thing is we do want them on the paper towel and not just on the Petri dish, because they need both water and oxygen to sprout, right? So if I show you this, sorry, this is what it might look like. I'm gonna make sure all of these are spread out. Boom, just like that. And these are not very evenly spread out. So I wanna kind of move them around. Again, you don't want anything touching. Theoretically, you want all of them to be kind of like this, spread out and apart. You can also do this in a later step after you add in your solution, which might actually be easier. So I'm just gonna leave these be for now. And figure it out after the fact. Okay, cool. So I've added my paper towels. I've also added my mung beans. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mix all of my salt concentrations. So let me go ahead and just really quickly put all of these mung beans inside. Mung beans roll around a lot, so I would be careful of where you are doing this experiment. And again, it's really handy to have the lids attached so that you don't lose the lids. All in there. And you get to choose how many mung beans you put inside each of the Petri dishes, right? Depending on how many you have left, you might choose to put 10 in each. You might choose to put 20. It's up to you. But remember, we want enough for this to be statistically significant and not just like anomaly in terms of data. Okay, so next we're going to mix our concentrations. And because I don't have a graduated cylinder at home with me, I want you all to just pretend that I'm using my graduated cylinder. I will try to use this as much as possible with the measurements, but I've already pre-measured out some water. So I've got 105 milliliters of water inside this cup. And this is going to be for my stock solution. And so remember, my stock solution is the one that I wanted the highest amount. So I'm going to follow this one right here. So I'm going to put 5.25 grams of salt in my 105 milliliters of water, and that's going to give me a 5% solution. So 5.25 ends up being all 7 of the salt packets that I gave you. So I'm just going to put in all 7 of my iodized salt packets in here. Depending on what your stock concentration is, this may be different, but make sure you are measuring the water and the salt as accurately as you can. Again, using your graduated cylinder for the water. You may have to fill it several times. So on. Cool. And I said you wanted about 100 milliliters of your stock solution. Realistically, you are not going to use anywhere near that much. So it is totally okay if you only make, say, 50 milliliters of your stock solution or something like that. Okay, great. So I'm just going to use a popsicle stick. You can use a spoon so that we don't do any waste, have any waste. I'm going to make sure it dissolves in the water. So I don't want any like crystals and stuff still at the bottom. I want to make sure it's fully dissolved. And again, if you are going to be using multiple cups or multiple test tubes or whatever, make sure that you keep track of which one is which. That is why I labeled this one stock, so that I don't forget it. Okay, great. So now I've got to make the rest of these things. And what I can do is I'm actually going to put the solutions into my Petri dishes as I make them so that I can get rid of them. So what I'm going to do is, again, I should have my mung beans on top of my paper towel here, which I'm not doing a very good job of at the moment, but I'm going to fix it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 20 milliliters of my stock solution, and that is going to go in my 5% because that's what my stock is, right? So I'm going to measure that out in here because I don't have a graduated cylinder, but you should use your graduated cylinder. It will be much easier. So this is 15 milliliters. I'm going to add my 15 plus 5. Again, y'all should use your graduated cylinder, makes life way easier. And again, try to be as accurate as you can. You want to hold it at eye level, or better yet, put your graduated cylinder down on the table and then get down at eye level to check the water level. Okay, great. So I've got 20 milliliters of my stock solution in here. And now what I can do is I'm actually going to now fix my mung beans because I think they will better able to stay and stick around. If you would like to use gloves, you may, but this is salt and water, so it should be fine. If you have something like tweezers, that could also help with moving the mung beans around. But I find that just moving around with my fingers works just as fine. Okay, so this is actually better looking now. Yeah, so I've got them all spread out far apart. And then what I'm going to do is, if you have more of the paper towels, you're going to put the paper towel on top as well. And you're going to see that it soaks right up with the salt solution, so it becomes wet as well. And then we're done with that setup. So this is my 5% Petri dish, pretty much done. Great. So now I'm going to do my dilutions. So the next one that I am trying to make is, let's do the one that's on here on the example, which is a 2.5%, which means I need 10 milliliters of the stock concentration and 10 milliliters of water. So I'm going to make my solutions in here in a separate cup, just because I think it'll be easier. So according to my calculations, I'm going to need 10 of my stock and 10 of just my regular water. And I just put it in a cup, but you can grab it from the sink or wherever you need to. Cool, and then pour that in. What I did there just now is actually really bad practice, right? If I'm measuring this with my salt solution and then I'm measuring it with my regular one, I might have different ratios, and I also shouldn't be pouring anything back because now there's probably a tiny bit of salt in this. So if you're using the same measuring tool, I suggest having some sort of trash bin or just doing it by the sink so that unlike me, where I was dumping it back into here, you should just dump it into the trash. Cool. So now I have my 2.5 concentration solution here. I'm going to go ahead and mix it to make sure it's evenly mixed. I'm going to find my Petri dish that says 2.5 solution, or whichever one you are using. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Pour, fix my mung beans, etc. You can use your pipette if you want to help fix the mung beans. You can also use your pipette when you are measuring the water. I highly recommend you do this, especially when you get down to the smaller amounts of water toward your lower concentration salt solutions. Okay. Great, and again, I'm making sure all of the mung beans are spaced out. I'm also making sure that they're all on the paper towel. Cool, and then I'm going to take my second paper towel, put it on top, make sure all of it is covered, and close. Once you have the solutions in, remember that there's liquid in here, so try not to like tip your Petri dishes. Make sure you keep them really flat when you store them. Okay, great. So you are going to do this for all of your Petri dishes, all of your solutions, etc. So for example, my next one, I'm going to take 4 milliliters of the stock and then 16 milliliters of water. And then the next one, I'm going to take 2 milliliters of stock and 18 milliliters of water. And then I'm going to take just water, 20 milliliters of it, and put it in for my control, right? Oops, sorry, y'all. So once you have all of these set up, kind of the last things that you need to do is make sure you figure out how you're going to stop evaporation, right? So what you might decide to do is tape around the edges here, or you might decide to wrap it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of tape, and I'm actually, if you have enough tape, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to save some tape here. I'm just going to cut it in half lengthwise so that it's about half the width. You can also rip it. Cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this strip of tape and I'm just going to follow the edge of the Petri dish on the sides there, just like that. And I'm going to wrap it around. And then hopefully this will seal in the solution so that there isn't as much evaporation on there. Great, so I can do that for all of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find a place to store these. You don't want to put them in direct sunlight because then, of course, evaporation might happen much quicker. But you can leave them out if you want to. You can put them in the dark and see if that does anything. But again, not in direct sunlight. So opposite of the eco column, do not put it on your windowsill where it will get a lot of light. Then what you're going to do, each day, just come back, check on it. If you want to take some pictures, you can. And then head over to the next video when you're ready to actually collect your data. And that should take hopefully between 2 and 5 days. Awesome. Happy lab doing.